Hello, hello. Gonna just fix that up. Anyhow, I'm here today in the Tier 10 Soviet destroyer in the torpedo hybrid line, the Grozovoi. We are on the map Two Brothers and the mode is Domination. I'm in 8 to 10 matchmaking, so standard matchmaking rather than purebred anything. And in the Grozovoi here today against a Harugmo and Tashkent with paired with a Friesland, we're spawning just below decap here. So I'm running my hybrid Grozovoi build, that is a build with concealment expert, no AFT, BFT, some other scouting skills, but essentially this is my hybrid build. Sorry about that slight ping spike. As I switch over into free cam, we are in fact doing a replay cast today. But here on Two Brothers, starting off, I note that Harugmo and Tashkent both are unlikely to beat me. Harugmo goes down to 6.2 at most, and Tashkent usually doesn't run Concealment Expert, usually an open water gunboat, so I'm very confident running right up to the cap. So the enemy team does have several radars. They have an Alaska and a Donskoy. They also have a Smolensk in KSC, a purple clan, so something to be aware of there. So I'm just going to start the game by very conservatively moving up into D as I get some further lag. And I'm going to reverse right into the cap. Usually in this map I pull up right alongside this island. This does block some of the fire from any ships that manage to flank out over here. And it makes escaping the cap quite easy. All you have to do is accelerate outward. Starting off, I do note the cap becomes immediately blocked, so I do have a duty in here with me. However, as I said, we do spot at the Georgia and Smolensk. However, as I said, I do know that I beat out both of them. Now, if it's a Harugmo, I only beat him out by 200 meters. So I do have to do this fairly carefully. But given the fact that I don't see any radars yet, and I haven't been radared yet, I can guess that the Donskoy probably isn't nearby, and the Alaska does pop up just now on the minimap, so I know I should be fairly safe to keep reversing. Now I'm watching my detection bubble here as I reverse to try and screen out the DD. The usual suspects are this corner, and this corner. So since I'm still not detected, it's most likely not here, so I do ping out that square as a likely spot for my teammates to look at here. I have two cruisers here, Smolensk and a Hindenburg, as well as two battleships. And I do end up spotting out the Harugmo now. As I spot him out, I do have to immediately start accelerating. He does briefly almost touch my detection, but not quite, and he does smoke up. So I immediately smoke in towards his, or I torpedo towards his position in the smoke, and then it's time to disengage. In case he panic torpedoes, I don't really want to be in the path or broadside. So I'm gonna get myself repositioned. Given that case, just gonna pull right up to here so that I can re-engage him if he happens to leave his smoke. Pointing bow in, so I'm in the Grozovoi. I have three 130mm twin turrets, which means I do get fairly outgunned by the 10 rifle Harugmo. However, do note that I held onto my smoke, so if he does engage me, I can simply smoke to disengage. At this point, I know both radars are 100% on the other side, and indeed the Harugmo did, in fact, leave his smoke. So here now I'm trailing him, not quite at full speed, slowing down a little bit, so he does slip away, but my enemy, or my allies do manage to fire off a salvo at him. Just carefully maintaining my range. I want to screen any potential torpedoes, so I'm going to stay as vertical inside of the cap as possible. Harugmo does pop up again by firing open water. He's kind of blocking with his smoke, but not quite perfectly. I am spotting him out, and so he does get spotted on and fired at. Not in a great spot for my torpedoes anymore, but they are still reloading due to the Grozovoi's rather long reload. This is of course exacerbated by the fact that I'm mounting the reload module. Briefly spotted by the Hrugmo as he pushes through his smoke. This means I'm going to have to disengage. Just opening fire onto him. But once he does open fire, I'm going to smoke up because he is in fact spotted by his own gun balloon by the Roma in this position. He was also spotted by Smolensk, but once I smoke up, my smoke is actually blocking the Smolensk's line of sight, so it's just the Roma spotting now. Just gonna send HE shells into his nose. He's not giving me any broadside or anything like that. Note the nice flat Russian arcs. Of course, when I'm playing up close and personal like this, skill like AFT doesn't really benefit me very much. Sorry about the stutter. It's a bit violent to look at, so just note that I'm still switching to AP as he attempts to show broadside. I've got a nice 2.5k chunk there, and you'll note because the Hrugmo is a very thick DD. Just gonna dump some torpedoes for the Yoshino in case he pushes forward. So at this point, because the Hrugmo's 67 knot torps are fairly fast, I can assume that he did not torp my smoke, so I'm fairly safe to stay in the smoke and harass the Yoshino. He is turning away, so my torpedoes are gonna miss, but that's fine. I got the cap, which is what I'm here for, so I'm gonna harass the Yoshino with HE as long as possible. Now the Yoshino is a high tier cruiser. He has 25mm plate, which means that my 130mm rifles with only about 20mm of penetration don't quite pen him. However, if I aim for superstructure, I can still get pens. So those, whenever I'm getting damage on him, those are the superstructure hits. Do note, however, that I am getting a fair number of non-penetrating shatters. Even at 9 kilometers, quite comfortable. My default range is just about 12.3. So even without AFG, the Grozovoi offers very comfortable gunnery experience. As my smoke fades, I do cease fire. He does almost evade me, but he's on fire, looks like from the Smolensk, and so he does get burned down. And at this point, the KSC Smolensk does pop up yet again, so I'm going to shadow him for as long as possible. Do note, however, that the enemy team has one ACAP on the opposite side with quite a significant force. So this Tashkent, if he's not intercepted by my Friesland over here, I might have to go deal with him. Now this poses a problem for the rest of my remaining teammates here, because the ship with the best concealment out of this whole pack is the Smolensk, and even then it's not great, and the Smolensk really needs a spotter in order to perform. Now as the Smolensk passes through, I do take some cheeky pot shots at him. Didn't end up being worth it. He chunks me for something like 6,000 damage in just a single HE salvo. That's the Smolensk showing off its 16 130mm rifle broadside. So just imagine that for every one time I shoot, he shoots me just about 2.5 times. And you get an idea of how much damage he's capable of inflicting. Now Musashi, I assume, is not going to continue down the border or anything. I assume he's going to turn in, maybe turn away and up. So I do lead him with one tube, but it's kind of hard to judge where he's going to be going. At this point, I'm moving over to respond to the Tashkent. So I dump one tube for him, one tube for the Smolensk in case he reverses out to try anything cheeky. But at this point, I am going to leave and respond to the Tashkent. He did manage to kill off my Friesland, which means it's just North Carolina there. And assuming he doesn't open water, he can potentially take the cap, so I am going to respond to him. Now the Grozovoi as a Soviet DD is pretty fast, slower than the Khabarovsk by quite a bit. And the Tashkent indeed is faster than me, especially without my speed boost running. But I'm fairly confident I can make it there in time, especially if this guy keeps firing open water, because my Hindenburg and Smolensk are thankfully resetting him. You can see the enemy has better positioning, relatively speaking. They're quite forward, whereas my team is quite back. They have quite a nice spread on the minimap, which gives them some great crossfire angles, whereas all of my team are kind of focused on one line. Trying to put some shells in here onto the Tashkent, but you can see the fast Soviet shells being a bit of a detriment here. Now I am at risk from the Smolensk here, of course, so I do a little bit of dodging. 11 kilometers is still very easy for him to hit, but I personally feel it's worth my time to kill the Tashkent here, so we will dispatch him. As we pull away from him, however, do note that he's very likely to have torped us. And now because I don't have AFT after killing the Tashkent, because I was able to leave my maximum gun range from the Smolensk, I am able to fade immediately back into concealment because no one can spot me anymore. My gun bloom only extends out to 12.3. I'm more than 12.3 from the Smolensk, so instead of having to wait or having to smoke to break line of sight, or in this case, I would have just ducked behind this rock, I break line of sight immediately, which spares me an extra salvo or two from the Smolensk, which actually is quite important. So in the chat, my allies do ask me to return to BCAP because they can't really see without me there. Naturally, this is the play. Like, I could push through to here, but that's a long time of not doing anything at all, so it's better just to come in and support my allies, especially given that Georgia is pushing toward them. And we did end up losing the Alsace while I was away, most likely to the enemy Smolensk's HE fire. He's getting pretty close, but thankfully I have concealment expert, so I'm at 6-0 concealment, so I can play quite close in. Now my goal here is to torp the Georgia and also slip by him into ACAP. Musashi appears to have gone quite a distance away. Smolensk is on the border. So I'm just going to start by launching one tube, seeing how he responds. I'm assuming he's going to turn in. He might beach himself or might go around, but my guess is going to turn in. But since I'm not quite sure, I'm holding on to my second tube here at 6-6. So without concealment expert, I straight up just could not be in this position. And my torpedoes from my single tube do end up landing. And the Musashi shows up. Now the Musashi is over here, which poses a bit of a problem, because he can either steam straight forward, but more than likely he's going to maintain an angle and steam this way. My allies on the other side thankfully do kill off some people, and that poses a problem because even with my decent 6-0 detection rate, he's already getting quite close to me, which means I might not be able to squeeze through this gap into BCAP over here without getting detected. Obviously that's problematic because even though I am a fairly tanky DD, especially given I have a heal, he's really close to me, and I don't really want to be taking BBAP into my very large hull, and as you can see here, he does in fact breach my detection bubble. His secondaries open up on me immediately. I do skim him with a torpedo, thankfully. We get a flood, so I'm looking for a fire. I'm spotted anyway. I don't want to start smoking until I'm at the cap border. But we will see. Depends on what his salvo does to me. Waiting for... There's the main guns. Turning away now, but he does still slam me for 7.4k at close range. So he does manage to land all 6 of his shells, it looks like. So I do end up using my smokescreen to break line of sight. Waiting for my tube to load, but I'm going to wait for as long as possible to guarantee the kill. Now, keep in mind there's a Smolensk behind him, so if he gets too close, I am going to get proxy spotted. I'm checking my position there because, well, I realized I was going to beach, which is obviously not ideal. Now, remember the torpedo angles on the Grozovoi are not fantastic, so I do need to be careful. I need to give him quite a bit of broadside. He's approaching my smoke firing penalty. So I'm checking, he's turning in at this point. He blind fires, skims me again. At this point I'm proxy spotted by my gunfire bloom, so I have no choice but to launch torpedoes. I cannot guarantee that I'm going to survive. But it looks like the torps are on point, so I just need to survive long enough for him to die. Smolensk shoots me once. Fortunately, my rear is fairly saturated, and I managed to dodge the majority of his shells, shoot him twice, and my torps connect, and that breaks my gunfire bloom. So at this point, it's 3 versus 4. We're even on caps and slightly ahead on points. However, I'm being chased by Smolensk, and the enemy ships that are still up are in Alaska and Arun. So the Smolensk is only 9 kilometers from me here, so he's going to chase me over to this side. But if the Alaska and Arun are in fact coming toward me, I'm going to be in pretty big danger. Now the Alaska does have 10 kilometers of radar. His detection is just about 12.3. So I do get a look at him there, so he's not too close. If he happened to be right here, I'd probably just be dead. He just popped radar and I would die. But given the information of where the Alaska is, I need to just plunge straight north. Now as I'm plunging straight north, you'll note that the Smolensk is getting closer and closer. So at this point, I make the decision to abandon the cap. No, I'm very close to the Smolensk here, but I don't want to get closer to the Alaska's direction at all. So I'm gonna curve slightly towards Smolensk. Thanks to Concealment Expert, I'm still concealed at 6.4, 6.3. Have to be very careful here. I pop my speed boost just to maintain my speed. The Smolensk does 36 knots in a straight line, so my 40 knots stock speed is not quite enough. Leaning towards the rune a little bit. The Alaska closes to 10.8. Hopefully he doesn't figure out that I'm going straight north. Increasing my distance of the Smolensk now, he's plunging back in toward the cap. So I'm gonna move away from the rune, who potentially has hydroacoustic search. I have my last smoke charge thanks to my relatively conservative smoke use this game. And at this point, I'm just racing for the border. Maintaining my distance with the Alaska, I want to maintain vision on him at all times. Smolensk starts to smoke, however, and this is going to be a problem. Now I do want to get close in to try and dump my upcoming torpedo tube into the Smolensk smoke, but I do need to be wary of the Alaska's radar range. I'm almost touching it. I'm now touching it. So I'm hoping he doesn't radar here. He doesn't. So as he touches my range, I'm just trying to glide behind this piece of hard cover. I'm not sure if it'll save me from the Smolensk, but it's better than nothing. So I break contact with him briefly. So I'm going to make my torpedo run now. I should be in approximate range of the Smolensk, so I'm torping the smoke, and now I'm going to pull away again. I knew I was in the Alaska's radar range before. I'm still in the radar range, so I'm quite scared at this point. At this point, I'm talking with my teammates. I was worried that someone might die. I certainly was at risk of dying, but thankfully my Smolensk does use his speed to move across into A. Still at risk from the Alaska here at this point, and the Smolensk does unfortunately move out. And the Alaska breaks contact with me because of the smoke. However, based on his last known position, it did look like he was going to sail right into the torpedoes, and thankfully I do manage to hit him with the torpedoes that were not at all meant for him. And at this point, it's a nice safe game. The optimal play here would be to let the game tick out. There is a 5000 HP Smolensk, so I can just shadow him, and hopefully my Hindenburg can finish him off. However, my Hindenburg is not that healthy either, at only about 17,000 health. Or is it 11,000? Looks like it's 11,750. Gonna dump some torps into the Smolensk in case he keeps chasing. He seems to have a good idea of approximately where I should be, probably just based on his intuition and his information he has. He knows he's spotted. He knows that I had to run from the rune. So I do open up at this point, try and finish off the Smolensk for my Kraken, but oh boy, he does a lot of damage. So I smoke after about my third salvo, and he does blast me into oblivion as a result, unfortunately. I did not quite expect him to do that much damage to me, and I was hoping I could deal the 5,000 damage. Sorry about that. So yeah, I was hoping I could deal that 5,600 damage, but no cigar. And he does blast me into oblivion. Thankfully, we have a catch advantage. I do note that in the chat as well that it was a bit of a throw attempt by attempting to engage 1 versus 1 with the Smolensk. Turns out, between myself and the Hindenburg's rogue salvos, we did almost finish him. but almost doesn't really count, and if the game had been a bit closer, that could have been quite dangerous. Hindenburg, however, does manage to eventually land some shells, and that wraps up the game. Oh, nice. I'm showing off my riot broadcast. Well, that's all right. Just gonna reopen up the client. I do follow League of Legends, just as an aside. I am a bit of an ex-League of Legends player, so some of my mentalities and habits do come from that game. A bit of a battle-hardened MOBA veteran. MOBAs can be a bit toxic, so this community in this game tends to be a fair bit more polite, thankfully. That aside, gonna just get back onto the main client. As you can see, my password is quite lengthy, so have fun sending your spam emails to my burner email. Just waiting to log in. Unfortunately, because it was a replay, I don't have the scorecards for you. I guess I should have saved those. But as you saw at the end, it was just about 110,000 as I collect my tokens. Get out of my way, client. Thank you very much. Just about 110,000. In terms of damage, a fair bit more gun kills than anything else. But throughout the course of the game, I was functioning primarily as a scout and more secondarily as a gunboat. And that is, of course, thanks to my build. So this is my Grozovoi. Consumable-wise, there's only really one thing you can take on every slot, so just take premium of everything if you can afford it. And of course, the upgraded torpedoes. Now, slot-wise, there are many options you can take. Slot 1 main armaments is my choice, and then I'd like my engines the most, so I do take propulsion. If they do something to the defensive fire to make it less worthless, it might be worth mounting, but at the moment I don't believe it is. Slot 3 here, you could take aiming systems. I prefer the extra flak puffs. From AA Guns Modification 1, the Grozovoi does have a rather potent AA firepower. So amplifying a little bit is not too bad at all, and because GDs have the 100% AA accuracy at high tiers, or 95% I guess, and 100% on mid and long range, which means their flak puffs lead very accurately. It's actually quite beneficial. Propulsion to help you start that engine from when you're stopped from shooting, and concealment here, of course, and legendary module. Now if you don't have access to legendary module, I'd probably just take main battery mod. Now, main battery mod gives 12% reload at the cost of 13% traverse. Legendary mod gives you 18% reload. Doesn't quite tax your traverse as much, but does also tax your torpedo tube reload. It adds 10% to your torpedo tube reload, which brings you to a fairly lengthy time. Captain-wise, this is kind of what makes or breaks your Grozovoi. I'm using Alexander Ovechkin, and I am in a hybrid build. So for my Grozovoi build, I ended up taking preventative maintenance, last stand, survivability expert, and then concealment. And then I went back for superintendent because of the Grozovoi's heals and such. But of course, if you're starting this captain from, say, the Minsk or the Konevny, you don't need to take this immediately. So a lot of people will probably end up going PM, LS, SE, CE, BFT, and then superintendent. So this puts you to 16, leaves you with three skill points. So your options are either from there. You have 3 points left, right? So you have everything here, all three of these, last stand, concealment, and one of these. So you can take Demolition Expert, which is actually quite excellent on the Grozovoi. Remember, you have pretty good rate of fire, but more importantly, good range and good ballistics, which means you can actually land a lot of your shells even at longer ranges. And since you don't have the penetrative power with destroyer guns to penetrate battleship plate, unlike the Hirugma or Shimakaze, IFHE only puts you up to 27mm. Taking Demolition Expert does greatly increase your efficacy against battleships. I, however, opted to take Adrenaline Rush for a slightly more flexible overall DPM upgrade. This kind of upgrades your guns and torpedoes as you take damage. And of course you can control how much damage you take because the Grozovoi does have access to a heal. And so as you take damage, the Adrenaline Rush increases your rate of fire, just like BFT, and by increasing your rate of fire, you do effectively also increase your fire chance in that way, as long as you can keep your rifles firing. And then of course, since I took Adrenaline Rush, that leaves me with 1 spare point, so I went back to take Priority Target. It's just a bit of extra information to know how aggressive I can be. If I'm being focused by like more than 3 or 4 people, it's probably time to disengage. Probably want to stop open water gunboating, but if it's just one person looking at you, you can consider continuing to open water gunboat, as you might do in some of the AFT long range gunboat builds that you do see with the Grozovoi. Anyhow, that was a pretty spicy game in the Grozovoi I played last evening. Sadly, I don't have the scorecard for you, but I did end up being second on a team just behind my purple Hindenburg. And yeah, like as you saw there were multiple instances where by taking Concealment Expert and having that 6.0 concealment, I was able to play closer to a traditional destroyer, but a very tanky traditional destroyer with a heal, access to a powerful heal, and pretty decent guns. Now the Grozovoi gun power actually is inferior to, say, the Girin in terms of raw damage per second, but as long as you take advantage of your range and ballistics, she remains a very powerful gunboat, just not for straight up knife fighting brawls. You want to stay at a nice medium range versus destroyers. But that game, I was facing a Hirugma. I was able to beat out the Hirugma's 6.2 concealment, which is his maximum concealment, because I took Concealment Expert. So I beat him out at the cap, took control of the cap, and was able to function as a scout and shadow the Smolensk very, very closely. Many times in that game, I would not have been able to reposition myself as needed. If I didn't have CE, I would have just died. And probably wouldn't have been able to turn that game around by just controlling vision. So yeah, that's a more vision-based Grozovoi game, and this is kind of a run-up as to why I prefer the vision control Grozovoi build. And there you have it. Hybrid Grozovoi. Hope you enjoy. Cheers.